start with the first session where we have two esteemed speakers to share their views and experience on this topic, the PropTech Outlook 2023 and beyond, East and West challenges and opportunities. So we are looking forward to see how the East and West are happening in PropTech. So let us welcome our Dr. Alina. She is a global real estate consultant, speaker, investor based in San Francisco, California, from US. Wow. She offers solutions for different aspects of global real estate, advising on business development, marketing, transactions, PropTech solution, real estate practice, ethics, education, and volunteering. So I believe we can really hear her out and learn a lot from here. So Dr. Daniel will be facilitating this panel discussion. Please, Dr. Daniel, the floor is yours. Doctor, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. Yeah. I was looking for the microphone within all the tabs open on my screen. Thank you for the opening. Thank you for the introduction. And a huge thank you to Alina, Dr. Alina, for being with us today. Welcome to APPS 2022.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations for a great event, which was organized mostly by volunteers, and I'm not stranger to that. I know what volunteering means, and congratulations to all of you. This was a true tour de force. I had the chance to be on yesterday, on and off, you know, a time permitting, because I'm 16 hours behind, and it's here in the United States today, it's Thanksgiving Day, it's Thursday. So I'm thankful and grateful for this, you know, for this opportunity, and I'd like to extend it to you all.
Oh my God, I almost totally forgot about Thanksgiving because here in Malaysia is not that much practiced, so to say. Sure. So thank you 2 times in this case for taking off time and being with us during such an important day in US.
PropTech could be very digestive, so it's very good after Thanksgiving meal.
Okay, and then another topic of discussion, because the title of our panel today is East and West. Now the question is, who is in the East and who is in the West? Because here you have myself as moderator, not moderator, I would say colleague and fellow fireside chat with Dr. Alina.
So I'm allowed to ask you questions as well, right?
Absolutely. You have to. And the spiciest are the questions, the happier I will be. And so I was saying, I am from the West, somehow, from Italy, where I've been born. I was born in a few years back, just say so, age is only a number. And then I landed in Malaysia in the East in 1998. And geographically now I am in the East. But again, geographically somehow, if we look at the world, a global world without frontier, I am at the West of Alina. So I am the West, Malaysia is the West, Alina is the East. And Alina is the west of the East Coast of the US. So it's a East-West, a very confused matter somehow.
Except I was born Eastern than you were, because I was born in Romania. So I'm sorry,
yes.
But like, you know, who is Eastern now?
Beautiful country, by the way. Beautiful, amazing country with amazing people. I've been there a few times in the past. Okay, Dr. Alina, tell us a little bit your experience. What you do, because you have so many positions. You are extremely active in the built environment ecosystem. You are also a close friend of a very good friend of mine, Rusmin, that I've been having the pleasure and honor to introduce yesterday and discuss with him about Nusantara, the new capital of Indonesia. And I will also have again the honor to discuss with this evening during the last slot of APPS 2022. So tell us a bit about your background.
Sure, I'm very happy to. I mean, we do share a PhD in economics, and mine was in globalization in particular, and it was actually a very exciting time when I started that, because it was a time when the former communist bloc countries were preparing to adhere to the European Union. So I had the chance to do a lot of research in that aspect. And I've done research that was unrelated to real estate as well. For example, I had a chance to do research in biotech industry here in the US, in the Bay Area, after acquiring my PhD. But eventually I settled in this industry. I find it a very comprehensive and encompassing industry that actually connects so many other fields, the real estate. And I really consider it and applied economics, when you have so many indexes to follow in real estate, and it's such an important part of any country GDP. And I started as a practitioner. I do have a California broker license as well. And eventually I made my way into different global organizations such as FIAPSI, International Real Estate Federation, and I'm currently the National Association of Realtors, which is a 1.5 million members, global coordinator for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which covers 21 countries and 25 bilateral partners, including the Emirates, Turkey, Lebanon, and all the former Soviet bloc and the Balkans. And Africa, and that gives me a great overview on anything from PropTech to ethics to legislation to practice of real estate, building, affordable housing, so on and so forth. So I feel very fortunate to have this experience. I just organized recently a summit for Africa alone, discussing the opportunities and challenges in the industry. And that's pretty much my experience. And I do consult PropTech companies and developers and help them scale and look and implement their programs in other markets. So I'm looking all the time at similarities and differences between markets.
Yes, compare and contrast, which is how we can learn from each other. And yes. One thing that I've been noticing is how local cultures are enormously affecting the way countries, the way government, the way people are approaching the built environment at large. Malaysia is one of the emerging countries, emerging market in Southeast Asia, the one often people being a foreigner here for 24 years are asking me, why did you choose Malaysia? Why Malaysia? And I said, I always reply, beside the friendliness of people, the climate, the fantastic food that they have here, I look at opportunities, I look at stability, I look at infrastructure, soft and hard infrastructure, I look at financial stability and financial institution, I look at easiness of communication. And after Singapore, Malaysia is definitely the most developed countries in Southeast Asia from these readers, from these pointers. And as you are saying, I'm glad that you mentioned it, the principle of macroeconomics brought into the built environment, understanding that properties, unfortunately, a lot of people around the world are still looking at property as a bunch of bricks and a mass of cement put together, all right? But properties are much more than that. Property have to be developed with a reason, with a demand behind, according to paths, according to growth paths, which will ease the development, the sales, the lease of property, compared to this unordered, I wouldn't say driven, government driven, because property are good in an open market situation, but definitely the government has to set rules of engagement, has to set planning plans and urbanization plans. Urbanism is becoming the science of the 2020s. People are going to flock towards urban centers more and more in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Urbanization rate is going up everywhere in the world, and this brings huge challenges. Now, I remember I've been living in US for 7 years, back in the 80s, in the north.
Seems like Michigan,
states.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And I have to say for the record that I know both Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Actually, last time I've been there was 2015. But I agree with you. I think Kuala Lumpur was impressive in many ways, and there are a lot of things happening, a lot of technology, a lot in PropTech, and FinTech. And yes, I can see why you chose to live there.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about the future that we have here. But again, I've been looking into how Europe and some of the countries in Europe in very different manners, Australia,
US,
have been addressing some of the social issue related to the built environment. Affordable housing is one of them, and I'm extremely passionate about it. And I can see huge differences. Affordable housing in US is, I believe, still a huge challenge. Am I right?
It's true, although I have to say that as in Asia and in other parts of the world, there are a lot of PPP programs in US as well. Let's just take example of San Francisco, that everybody knows San Francisco, right? That continues to be a very important, if not the center of technology in the world, although it's arguable if it's as interested and is leading the way in PropTech right now. We can argue about that just because there are all sorts of products and trends everywhere in the world. And I think that in FinTech, yes, maybe, but in PropTech, maybe less so. But regarding affordable housing, since you mentioned that, in San Francisco, there are rules, not only zoning rules and incentives as well for developers. And one of the easier solutions that the local government found in California and in San Francisco was to request from the developers to include below the market rate units within a market rate development. For example, you have a development with 100 units, 10 of them must be below market rate units, and they will be sold based on lottery to first-time home buyers. They will have to be vetted and go through a first-time home buyer program to teach them about responsibility and what does it mean to own a home and financing and so on and so forth. So let's say that if a one bedroom would be in a market rate development 1 million, below the market rate will be 400,000. And, so that would be
that
one
is
of
the proportion.
Exactly.
Is the proportion. Right.
The other will be rezoning, like, for example, we have, as you know, we have certain areas with, the Section A housing, which are affordable housing or government-owned housing. And that also have been rezoned and allowing developers to build luxury and next to them very good looking, almost as good looking and with the ESG in mind, and all sorts of sustainability features in mind, affordable housing, or housing for government. So those were solutions, and incentives for them, because there is financing and all sorts of programs, and from the World Bank to US government type of programs for financing.
Okay, a couple of questions out of this before we enter in how the PropTech industry and ecosystem is helping affordable housing and urban development towards a better future, more respectful, more in line, more compliant with SDG and ESG, of course. Those initiatives are based on a state level, not on federal level. Am I right in US?
It depends. There are federal programs and they are just money allocated to state by state from federal government. Of course, you're working with HUD, and HUD is a federal program, right? But you do have programs at federal, state, and local level, and they all work together.
All right. And is there any specific solution, or there has been an interest of PropTech solutions toward these kind of hot social issues?
That's good that you asked, because I was looking. I'm not sure if you know about that, but in the U.S. Not only there is an entire activity, I would say, outside of the real estate profession, but the National Association of Realtors has its own VC company, that's called Second Century Ventures, that it's a PropTech incubator. And this is what they do. They will incubate PropTech companies and platforms that they keep the real estate professional in the picture and not eliminate it. So with that in mind, you will see all sorts of, actually every year right now, since 2018, there is an IOI Fest somewhere in the US organized by NAR. And there are pitch battles and competitions and, the new runner-uppers and the new incubated companies from anything from commercial real estate platforms to fractional selling, to PropTech for good, to remodeling platforms, to blockchain platforms, right? So I was looking that this year, one of those companies in a pitch battle that happened in LA, actually in September, is a company that will help buyers who cannot afford to buy, and they will buy houses for them, and they will have the buyers in this program to teach them responsibility, help them build equity and be able to get a loan, and then we'll sell them the home, and they will make a small profit there. So I think that platforms that they will be able to help the end user, people who don't have enough equity, help them build equity, help them educate, in financial aspects and how to become first-time home buyers. They will be platforms, they will be useful all throughout the world. And they will solve the problem of equity and funding for the end users, for people who are maybe unbanked. Maybe they are able to pay the mortgage rate every month, but they don't have equity, they don't have a down payment. So I think those kind of platforms will be very useful, not just in the US, but in Asia, in Africa, and all over the world.
Here in Malaysia too, we have had in the last few years a rising interest, fast rising interest towards a peer-to-peer financing platform, meaning small investors financing home buyers.
Crowdfunding too.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a private crowdfunding, kind of. And this is one. And another one was own-to-rent scheme, rent-to-own scheme. Rent-to-own schemes, which have not been very successful, mostly, in my view, because of the time frame given for the renter to become an owner, which is below 5 years of time. Financially not actionable in terms of being enough time to earn, being able to live, and being able to save enough to become a home owner somehow.
I think those need to be calibrated. I think you are right, and I think that there've been many versions of that. But you know, I think in the US, if you heard and you know, big platforms such as Zillow, they had an iBuyers program, right? That's a little bit different, because eventually that program failed. They withdrew it. It didn't work for them. They invested a lot of money in it, and it ended up not working very well. I think that in order to solve both a equity problem for the end users, for people with low income, and make it sustainable longer term, it needs to be calibrated right. It needs to have a set of rules. Maybe it has to have the help of government. And I think that probably in Asia, you see more of this kind of innovations driven and supported by government that you see in US, for example, since we are comparing West and East. The reason being that it is regulated here, but I think that the private actors are reactive to whatever the government decides in the US.
Yes, absolutely. Here, all these type of initiative have had a very strong, in Malaysia above all, a very strong support from the government. The Malaysian government has a number of tech agencies, startup agencies set up back. The oldest one is MDEC. MDEC is under the Minister of Science and Technology, if I'm not wrong, and was established more than 20 years ago, if I'm not saying it wrongly, with the scope of ease digital transformation and help bringing in socially impactful technologies towards a growth of the urban living environment, which in Malaysia is pretty much high. We are already at 77% in terms of urbanization. So for us, transforming a building and car-centered development into human-centric development, super dumb city into at least intelligent city, don't say smart yet, is one of the big challenges that we have here. One more question for you in terms of technology. Technology, not only soft technology, but hard technology brought into the built environment, such as robots, such as 3D printing, such as other hard technologies that are available currently in US. Because here in Malaysia, 3D printing is something everyone talks about without knowing anything about it, and we never saw it, kind of.
Actually,
but we saw that in Africa or Mexico, and several companies in US, if I'm not wrong, are
actually it was I was watching something from Dubai, which I've been in Dubai recently this year for the World Fair. But somebody was claiming that the first 3D printing building was in Dubai, but I think it was not. And it was definitely not. Everybody's claiming to have one. But I remember distinctively going to another global event in New York last year in 2021. And it was a company who was doing that in New York State. And they were doing housing, not big size, modest size, regular size, US size. They were doing it, they were just doing 3D printing. And I think that there are a lot of, in terms of at least construction management software and, ways to build, I think that there is a lot of progress in the US and in a lot of universities as well, such as Stanford, and other universities, that they have very strong programs in building management. Also a lot of software. I think that this trend will continue. I think the IoT will continue. I think I understand that you will have somebody talking about IoT very soon. That will be continuous, the way how we operate different devices in our home through our phone, and how everything will be connected that way. I think also industry-led data models and sustained digital processes. This is actually what they are. And this is definitely a trend and will continue. And I think that will be spread, will be more widespread all over the world very soon.
Yes.
Yes. And I I actually wanted to ask you something because we are not talking about it anymore. So we just came out of a pandemic, a massive one that closed us almost entirely. At least here in San Francisco and in California, we were closed for a very long time. And so were you. We couldn't travel internationally. And at the time, I wanted to actually mention that I think we were at the peak of urbanization process, and everybody was talking about building more and more communal spaces, getting used to living in very close proximity to each other, building almost everything, I mean, every single building, that was conceived and was built pre-pandemic included very well thought common areas like fitness areas, areas where you could work from home in your building, along with other people. I don't know, common parties areas, pools, and so on. And once the pandemic came, all those closed. They closed everywhere. So if you lived in a big building with such amenities, which were actually the selling point pre-pandemic, they were closed, right? So now I think there is another problem. We'll continue to build that way because obviously most of the population will continue to live in big cities and will continue to build vertically. We have no land, right? But we are building differently. So now we're talking about smart buildings, smart in a way of climatization, for example. You need to have proper ventilation, or buildings which will be able to decouple areas in case of another pandemic. So you can decouple and you make sure that people who are elderly, for example, will not get sick, or children, or so on. So what is the trend and what is the change right now in Southeast Asia and in Malaysia? Let me ask you now.
Wow, that's a hard-core question, honestly. Well, here in Malaysia, the pandemic that no one is mentioning any longer, as you were rightly saying, has been leaving a deep scar in terms of realizing, point one, that working doesn't mean being in a physical place. You can do this from home. And the work from home or hybrid working is still extremely popular here. Myself, and I'm not the only one, I've been closing down my physical office in 2020. Until now, it's still closed down. My people are still working from home. I'm connecting with them via Zoom, virtual events, virtual webinar, virtual training for my clients. Not because I don't like being in social physical events. I love it. I am a networker. I am a people's person. So I love that, but it's not happening any longer at the rhythm that was happening before. Secondly, trend that has been very, very popular here in Southeast Asia is the discovery of being able to comply with your duties in a shorter time, because you don't waste time in traveling, you don't create pollution, you don't create congestion, traffic congestion, and so on. And you are able to have a multiple source of income, differentiated. Start your own online portal, start your own small business, above all in sales, marketing, or e-commerce. A lot of Southeast Asian have been jumping to that bandwagon. And in terms of unutilized spaces, one of the trends, because here in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, from medium, even medium low cost, high-rise condominiums are having at least a swimming pool, a squash court, and some of them a space that is either dedicated to volleyball, badminton, basketball, or tennis, all in 4-in-1, 5-in-1, at least. The high-end condominiums, the list of facilities enjoyable facilities are touching the 40 or the 50 items in one condo, in one development. And as you are saying, a lot of these spaces have been unutilized during pandemic, and nowadays still looked at as a space which might be utilized in a better manner. Developers are looking into co-working spaces because of the previous trend. There are several property developers that have been allocating few thousand square feet of built space. Some of them are giving it empty. Some of them are giving it with a basic trendy type of renovation. But a co-working space reserved for the residents, not open to external parties, reserved to the residents that desire, that wish to come back home and have a space, a quiet space to work. Of course, the smaller is the residential unit, the bigger is the co-working space offered. If you understand the proportion. So that has definitely been one of the trends. That has been one of the trends here in Malaysia.
I think it's the same here. Unfortunately, there are repercussions as well, and that will be that the commercial real estate sector and office sector, it's really suffering right now, at least in the US and in San Francisco. In San Francisco, even more, as you know, there are a lot of tech giants who just went entirely to work remotely. So the employees are not required to go to office anymore, which created a stress on the downtown financial district of San Francisco, which is not as lively anymore and killed all the adjacent businesses. So I think that probably in the next few years, we'll see some rezoning interventions from the local government and state and incentives for developers to convert some of those offices into residences. And we'll see more mixed use downtown of residential and offices space to bring back community life as we know it before, because every city means liveliness. And we were deprived of that for a while. And I believe that that will be the trend here as well.
Yes, absolutely. And bringing it back to the PropTech contribution in rebuilding a more sustainable urban centers, urban development, smart urbanism, or future urbanism, how they call it. PropTech here in Asia has been going through a progressive adoption. We know the 3 waves defined by Professor Andrew Baum in the Syed Business School attached to the Oxford universities, defining triggers which have been bringing PropTech from 1.0, just purely storage of data on computers back in the 80s, till PropTech 3.0, where through the use of cloud storage, mobile devices, apps, very well developed and market penetrated Wi-Fi, everyone could access anything from anywhere. We are now entering the 4th wave of PropTech with the AI, with the blockchain, with fractional properties, proposed
machine learning,
smart contract, and more. What is the position, let's say, what is the stage of development of this PropTech 4.0 wave in US, government-wise and players-wise?
I think that, thank you for the question. You know, that's something that I wanted to talk about it. I think that the trend right now, and it's a normal trend. So we do have good instruments to assess properties and appraise them and to trade them. But I think the global trend, in US included, is to change the way we trade and we exchange real estate assets. And the idea is to make them more indexed, just like any other assets that we sell. Just because I think that for a very long time in the history of economy, we were looking at assets such as stocks and securities in a different way, and they were indexed while the real estate was not properly indexed. So I think that right now the trend is an analogy to look more at the real estate as you look at the Dow Jones Industrial, for example, average. And to take all this, like, for example, to look at real estate in certain neighborhoods and in certain cities and in certain countries, how you look at the 30 most prominent companies listed on a US stock exchange, or other exchange in the world. And to take San Francisco or Manhattan or Los Angeles and index those and put them into silos and be able to look at them and to help the appraisers, banks, real estate professionals, insurance companies to better understand the pricing and the trading. So I think that this is one aspect, and this is what everybody is looking at, and this is mostly done through AI and machine learning. Secondly, of course, it's treating them as securities by NFTing them, right? Everybody talks about NFTs and about blockchain, which, has been done, but very timidly and modestly here. And as far as I'm concerned, and at this point, it's more of a cumbersome process. So the complex needs to be continuously simplified. Everybody talks about it, but I know that there is a company that NFT'd some property in Florida, and they had to create an LLC and put the property into the NFT inside of the LLC, and to trade that, to transfer it, it's really a headache. You can prove it that technically can be done, but it needs to be very easily done, because what we're looking at here, it's shortening the duration of a transaction, shortening the duration of a loan, for example, of an insurance, underwriting. So we would like to use machine learning and blockchain and AI to simplify that and just making it instant, maybe. I mean, I think that we're all aspiring to get a loan in 24 hours or to have a insurance or a title underwriting within 24 hours. Why? Because we can use AI and machine learning. And then we can NFT them and maybe put them on a blockchain. So I think that they all can work together. But for right now, the process is very cumbersome. It's actually, it's something for some, cult. There is a cult of people who are very much into this, and we like to use different terms and argot, but in reality, it's not as easy to work. I think it's here to stay, but it's an intermediary stage. We'll get there eventually.
We need probably some expert in blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, and more are talking about a 6 to 8 years time frame before seeing a bit more implementation. Problem is with blockchain. Blockchain is a digital infrastructure, the digital ledger, basically, which is hyper secure, and where your thumbprint is everywhere. Meaning we know who enters, who modify, and why modify, right? So here in Malaysia, government-driven initiative in adoption of blockchain in the facility and asset management, in the construction industry, even in real estate as information, big data holding infrastructure. That is already not popular, but is rising in interest, where we still are far away from a full application because of lack of compliance.
Exactly.
For the transaction, for the fractionalization of property, the idea of everyone can be a property investor, right? Doesn't matter if you invest $1, $10, $10,000, you can invest in property. To me, I might be a bit, because of my gray hair, attached to the old principle, but it doesn't make sense that much. Then I go for a REIT. I prefer to go for a real estate investment trust instead of blockchain. Why do I need blockchain? It's more a kind of a marketing hoo-ha. kind of, I look at it at least in this manner.
It's the form, and again, as I was mentioning before, I believe it's the ease of transacting and transferring, and this is actually one of the big problems we've been having, that we cannot transfer real estate assets easily across borders, for example, as you could stocks. So that is a problem, and that's the reason, it's simplifying that, physical, it's still very physical, and it needs to be indexed. And I believe that this will be the future, and it will make it easier.
The appearance of Angela is telling us that we are almost at the end of this extremely interesting discussion.
This is our beautiful way to tell you time is up. But anyhow,
no, it's not. We still have 3 minutes. There is one last question I want to ask.
You have 1 more minute and 1 more minute. 2 more minutes each. Very interesting topic. Let us wrap up. Thank you so much.
And I really hope, Dr. Alina, to be able to keep the discussion rolling, because I would like to deepen the knowledge about what is happening there, sharing with you what is happening here, and find common ground of understanding and cooperation. One last question, very short. What is the relationship between built environment stakeholders and PropTech startups in US? Is a friendly, fully in love, complicated, or full fight looking for divorce?
I think that everybody understands that they need to be on board with that and to find solutions. And rather than fight them, I think that they agree to adapt them, in different, in different forms and shapes. I think that everybody is at different stages of adapting it, but I think it's happening and there is an understanding.
Wow. Here we are still, we call our relationship complicated.
Oh, of course it's complicated here too.
Like the wife that finds the husband suspect of cheating, and the husband replying to the wife, "Oh, I'm doing this because I saw you cheating." Kind of.
Interesting analogy.
Kind of. And in some cases, above all, with the real estate agents, there is not an open fight, but definitely not such a good and friendly relationship. They are accusing us to take over.
If I may say that, like in the US, 85% of the home buyers and sellers use a real estate agent. While I think it's a little bit different, it's
same here. Is 100%, not 85%. By law, whatever is related to real estate has to be handled by either real estate agents or valuers. And it's perfectly fine with us. And we keep on telling them, guys, we are giving you a digitalized process, a digital tool to make your life easier. But they keep on telling us, no, you are going straight to the buyer, you are going straight to the tenant, you are going straight to the leaser, and you disrupt our industry, and we will remain without jobless, and this kind of fantasies, which are not actually happening. So here, our relationship is still quite complicated, allow me to say. Dr. Alina, with a tear in my eye, I need to give back the stage to Angela before she takes it using the brutal force.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Daniele. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, all of you, and congratulations for such a marathon PropTech event.
Thank you, Dr. Alina,
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your Thanksgiving night.